You've probably seen the Jeffrey Dahmer special on Netflix, that new television show. It's like it made me think. Do you know anybody in your life that you thought possibly could have been a serial killer? So I've got a couple stories about some people that I often suspected they possibly could have been serial killers. Now, this first story, I was probably in about seventh grade. And there was a guy, I can't really remember his name because he only went to our school for like a short period of time. So I'm going to call him Ian. And now, Ian was like a strange dude. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I mean, there was just something off about him. And like, he was very antisocial. He stayed to himself. He didn't talk to anybody. And like, he would always like draw these weird doodles in his notebook during class of like animals dying. It was really weird. And you used to see like Ian in random places all the time. Like, he would like just like walk out of the woods all of a sudden. You'd just be walking near the woods and you'd see him like walk out of the woods, or you'd be walking on the train tracks and you'd like see him walking out of the woods. And so I always thought that was strange that he was just in the most random places around town all the time. Now, one day, a bunch of my buddies and I, we got together, and it was like a Saturday night. And we're like, let's go down to the place we called the beach at the time. And there was like a place where we go and have bonfires and stuff on the weekends. So we go down to this place to go have a bonfire. And we're like hiking to the woods to get to this place. And we start joking like, wouldn't that be crazy if like Ian all of a sudden appeared out of nowhere? Because we always seen him everywhere. And about 10 minutes later, we hear someone like walking on the same trail as us in front of us. And all of a sudden, here comes this Ian dude. And he's got a shovel in his hand. He's got a pillowcase in his left hand, and he's just walking down the trail. And we're like, hey, Ian, what's up, man? Like trying to say hi to him. And he just ignored us. And he just walked right past us. So we thought, okay, that's kind of weird. And in the back of our minds, we're thinking, did he just like do something weird out here in the woods? So we didn't think about it much that night after that, but the next day, me and a couple buddies, we were talking about it. We're like, maybe we should go back into that area and just kind of check and see like why he had the shovel and the pillowcase. So we go back to that area and we start looking around the woods, and that's when we find a spot that looked like you could tell that it had been dug out and that someone had filled the dirt back in. And we start digging it up. And we recovered this pillowcase. And inside the pillowcase was a bunch of old 80s VHS tapes. Like, I mean, they were legit VHS tapes with the labels on them and everything, not in their cases. And then like a stack of pictures of just random pictures of the woods, like areas in the woods. Which we thought, okay, that's really, like, why would he bury this stuff out in the woods? Like, we was expecting to find maybe, some sort of crime there or something. But it was just strange. And about like, I think it was like 2 months later, we, once again, me and a couple buddies was walking down the train tracks. Once again, we see Ian like come out of the woods. And he's carrying like a shovel and like another bag in his hand. And that time we did check on it. We just, we didn't really think anything of it. And about a couple more months after that, he ended up just leaving the school and moved somewhere. And I never seen him again. But in the back of my mind, I always thought there was something strange about this kid. And I always wondered, like, was he doing something weird? Like, what was he up to? And that always stayed with me. The second story was a friend of mine, actually. He could be a cool guy sometimes, and sometimes he could be like the most terrifying guy to be around. And I think possibly he may have had like bipolar disorder or potentially other mental illnesses. But he would literally just like snap like that. And there was no telling when he was going to snap. And that was the scariest part. But like I said, when he was chill, he was like cool to be around. So you kind of overlook that. And I think that's why we hung out with him. And, just to give you an idea of how he was, when we was like 11, 12 years old, we're just like walking around the block, and this kid comes up to him and like says something to him. And now you gotta understand, this guy is like 11, 12 years old. He's 6 foot tall. He's a big dude. Like, he's very husky and very strong for like 11, 12-year-old boy. He grabs this other dude and just starts choking him. And this boy, like, almost, starts to lose color. We're trying to get him off of him. He wouldn't, budge. And at the last moment before he probably would have killed him, he just lets go. And then he turns around and he tells a joke. And he's just like all happy again and just like acts like nothing happened, Just to give you an idea of the kind of person he was. So later on, when he got his license, when he turned like 16, me and like 2 other buddies, he hit us up and was like, "Hey, let's go for a ride somewhere. Let's go drive somewhere, for fun." So we go to this old place that's outside of town. We called the barge graveyard, because there was all these old barges just like parked in this area on the river. And we go there and we start exploring the barges and stuff and like hanging out. And then we get ready to leave. We get in the car with him. And he's driving. I'm in the back seat. Friend's in the passenger seat. Friend's over here. And all of a sudden, it's like he just snapped. And he says, "I could just drive us right now and kill us, And what's crazy about it is we're going down this like gravel road that's next to the river. And if he drove off, it's dredged out right there, so it's very deep water. We would have went into the river. And he starts driving like 80 miles an hour. And he's all erratic, whipping the car left and right and talking about just driving into a tree, driving into the river. And we're just like panicking. We got our old flip phones. We're texting to one another saying like, "Hey, should we just like jump out of the car and try and, survive that way? Because I think, is he going to like kill us or what's going on?" And then all of a sudden he just snaps. And then he just starts laughing and he's just like telling jokes again. And it's like he went back to normal. And I haven't really talked to this guy in a long time, so I don't really know what actually became of him, but I always thought there's a possibility he could be some sort of serial killer. And then finally, this third story was probably the creepiest one. My father owned like an old, he had like a furniture store, and right next to the furniture store, he owned like a candy store / arcade. And he had this guy that ran the candy store and an arcade. His name was Mike. And like Mike was a cool dude, really nice, really chill, short guy, always wore cowboy hat, cowboy boots, very talkative, tell a lot of jokes. And he was a cool guy. Like, he didn't give off any bad vibes or anything like that. And actually, I felt really comfortable around him. Now, one day, like, Mike got to the store, and my dad, I'm here at the furniture store with my dad, and he says, "Go out, help Mike unload his truck. He's got, or unload his van. He's got, soda and candy or whatever, bring it into the back room." So I go and I start helping this guy, Mike, out. And when he opens the back of his van and we start taking the stuff out, I noticed there was just like an unusual amount of rope. Like there was like all these rolled up, probably 200, 300 feet of rope, rolled up. And there was just rope all over the car. Like, it was weird. Like, he had all these different types of rope in the car. And I thought that was kind of strange. Like, what did he need all this rope for? And but then I was a little young at the time, so I didn't really think much of it. About 5 or 6 months after that, he leaves and says, "I'm moving to Minneapolis," and so he moves up to Minnesota. And about 2 or 3 years later, we see this story on the news that this same guy, Mike, had killed 3 prostitutes, had strangled them to death with rope. And I thought that was crazy, because I remember seeing all that rope in the back of his van, and that was just really eerie. So that's just some of my stories that I have. I'm curious to hear your guys' stories. If you got any stories, where you thought potentially you might have encountered, could have been a serial killer or something, feel free to drop it in the comment, your story. Let everybody read it, man. Thanks for watching. Peace out. I'm Parahan.